Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Practical Training Podcast with yours truly, Mike Bell, here with PTP Firearms Training. Today, we are kind of crossing streams a little bit. We're taking it from the firearms world into the technology world, and we're going to look for that perfect marriage of where technology is actually helping further the cause of the Second Amendment. So with that, guys, please join me in welcoming Mr. Ryan Workman from Please join me in welcoming Ryan Workman from CCW 50 State Concealed Carry, the app that's available on all major platforms. Ryan, how you doing, man?
Very good. It's great to be on the show.
Man, I found out about you, I guess it's been several months now, but I found out about you in a class. One of the lead instructors here at PTP, Ryan Gass, one day, this picture showed up in our slide deck that we present. It said CCW 50 State Concealed Carry, and it said $1.99 on it. I said, Ryan, so what the hell is that? Like, after he had kind of introduced it to the class, he's like, there's this really cool guy. He put together this app that you basically have on your phone that breaks down a lot of the laws and different stuff like that about what it is to conceal carry, what the laws are and regulations are for each state. I said, I got to find out more about that. So I purchased the app. I've been using it myself. I've added all my permits and all that stuff to it over the past few months. And I finally was like, you know what? This is pretty sweet. I got to get this guy on the show. So I appreciate you taking the time to come on and share your knowledge and share your history with us. So again, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity.
So I see you're wearing a Beretta shirt there, and I can't quite make the hat out. At first, I thought it was one of those guys from ICP, and you are from Indiana, so it might have kind of made sense there. I don't know if you remember who the Insane Clown Posse are.
I've heard them, but no, this is an NRA hat.
An NRA hat, okay. All right, so you've got an NRA hat on, and you're wearing a Beretta shirt. So what I want to kind of ask right off the get here is, how did you get into firearms, and basically, what is your background with firearms?
Absolutely. I've always been interested in firearms. I grew up in Illinois, which required a license, which is called a FOID card, in
Okay.
order to purchase or acquire a firearm. You have to be 21 to get a FOID card without parental consent. So as soon as I turned 21, I applied for one. Shortly thereafter, purchased my first firearm. It was a 22 caliber pistol. I still have it, and I still shoot it occasionally.
Okay.
I the other interesting part, right, is not only the guns, but the technology side and the gun laws. I became enthralled in state and federal firearm laws when I got my first carry permit back in 2009.
Okay.
Also around that time, I became very active in Illinois Carry, which is a group who is fighting for the right to carry in Illinois. We finally got there in 2013, being the 50th state to have carry.
And that was 2015 is when Illinois finally started offering carry permits?
2013.
2013. Yeah, it's crazy, man. But it sounds like you have a lot of engagement, not just with owning firearms, but actually being a progressive in the movement and getting out there and participating in like Illinois Carry, similar to what we have out here as Maryland Shall Issue, right? And having your voice heard. That's really cool, man.
Yep, I'm hoping for the Supreme Court decision, which will force Maryland to shall issue. It was a court decision which forced Illinois. I mean, it was a Court of Appeals decision, which is the only reason Illinois finally went to a licensing as opposed to no issue. So that's where it ends up seems to be where it ends up going. Is
Yeah.
the courts finally force some of the reticulant states to do the right thing.
We're hoping for the same thing. And, the philosophy here at PTP, at least Ryan put it out there in the past, was, right now, part of the offerings we have is the training necessary forced upon people by the state of Maryland to, you have to take training just to be able to purchase a handgun, just like your FOID card. It's called the HQL here. I'm sure you probably know more, probably one of the only people that know more about that than I do. The HQL, and then also you have to take training to get your wear and carry permit or your handgun permit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Ryan's always said, like, I would rather go out of business and have more people be able to carry than to just keep watching Maryland infringe upon people's rights. And yeah, so we're pushing for it. We hope for it, but you never know, right? I think they're going to actually hear that case in November. Is that right?
They are.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah, so are we. So you mentioned on it, right? You've got the firearms background, but then you've also have the technology background. where did those two worlds marry? Like, did you go to college for technology? Did you grow up, programming or something like that?
I did, yes. I've always been into computers. This is something that I've done. I was went to college for, played around in high school.
Mhm.
Always been into technology and computers. Just like I've always been into guns. So it's really convenient that I had a chance to do both of them together.
Absolutely. What led you? So again, I'll put it out there for those guys who may be tuning in a little bit late here. So this is Ryan Workman. He's the founder of this app. I have mine in the Apple. I've got mine on the Apple Store. I'm assuming, in fact, I know it's in the Google Play Store as well, right? And basically, what it is you download it. It costs you $2. And then after 2 years, I think it's 99 cents a year or something like that, which is literal pennies to support what it is you're doing. And it's a very small amount, guys. But essentially, you could download that, and it has all your reciprocity maps on it. And you could plot a map across the country where your permits will actually allow you to carry. It's a really, really robust app. It's unlike anything else that I've seen in the App Store. So, like, when did you finally start thinking, like, you know what? I'm going to make this app, and where it is today, I'm sure this is like multiple iterations from where it
Mhm.
started, but like, did you set out to make this app, or did you set out to make something different?
Well, it's interesting. I built this app because it's something that didn't exist and I wanted it to exist. Um, I had no idea it would get this big, and it certainly has become more complicated. I've added features, but the basic day one app is still probably close in, not in capacity, but close in theory to kind of what I did. What happens is, see, I'm a law-abiding person. I always have been, and I love taking vacations. I love taking long driving vacations. I found once I had a concealed carry permit, it was very difficult to stay within the law when traveling with a firearm.
Sure.
Not only does reciprocity and recognition change frequently, which you can track that, but there's there's numerous nuanced pitfalls as well. Right? Each state has very different rules on where you can carry if you have a license recognized by that state. Something that is perfectly legal in one state is a felony in the next state over.
Sure.
For instance, do you know that it's a felony to possess a lawfully carried firearm at a school bus stop in Arkansas? You're picking up your kid. That could be a felony, and
even
you're
if
not
it's
going to
on
know that.
private property. So it's, well, I guess all
It's
public roads are public property, I suppose. Yeah. So no, I
right.
did
If
not
it's
know
private
that.
property, then it's private property. But if it is an official recognized bus stop, it's actually a felony. Now, whether they charge on that or not,
Sure.
I don't know. But the laws are just so nuanced. And I'll tell you something else. It's not only where you can carry, but different specific circumstances. For instance, right now I live in Indiana. If I go into my grocery store and they have a no gun sign on the door, I can legally ignore that sign. I mean, they can kick me out, but there are no legal consequences.
Right.
But if I did so in Illinois and it's the right sign, they're charging me with a crime for the exact same thing, even
Understood.
though
Yeah.
even if I had Illinois recognized license. So there's so many different rules, it's impossible to know all of them in your home state, let alone all the other states. So even if you don't travel, it can be a very challenging time to always stay on the right side of the law abiding. And if you travel, it becomes almost impossible. And it was bothering me. I was spending all my time on vacation researching, trying to figure out, hey, I'm crossing through this state. Now, what are the rules here? So I said, boy, it'd be nice if there's an easy way to get this information that you could carry in your pocket everywhere you go.
Yeah, that's really cool. And what I like about it, excuse me, is that, a lot of people say, well, there's a website where I can go to, right? But what if you don't have
Sure.
service? You know what I mean? The app is the app. It's on you, lives on your phone. You have access to that data. So that's really cool. That's why I like it. I live, and notoriously, I'm surprised this podcast is even successful as it is, because I have the worst service in all of Maryland, it seems like sometimes. So it's nice to be able to have native files on my phone or on my computer. But something similar that you said here in Maryland, you probably know this, is, same thing. In Maryland, if they have a sign posted, you can choose to disagree with the sign. You can choose not to follow it, as far as like no guns allowed in the grocery store, right? But
Hmm.
if you go over to DC, then they can't enforce it, right? So it's like you never know. It's nice to be able to have that app in your pocket, and that's how we pitch it in our class, really, because we teach for multiple states, but our kind of triangle here that uh, DC, Maryland, and Virginia kind of triangle. We
Hmm.
qualify people for all three of those states, and we got to be very deliberate not to cross the law conversations between this is Maryland law and that's DC law. So what we do is we separate them completely. We do Maryland law at 8 a.m. in the morning, and then we do DC law at like 3 or 4 p.m. in the afternoon, right? To just try to get people to have that mental break. That way, and of course, you know as well as I do, the moment they leave your class, they'll remember 75% of what you told them. And then the Monday after, they may remember 50%. And then the Monday after that, it's like 25%. Right. So it's nice to be able to have that quick reference card, if you will, with that app in your pocket. Again, that's why I like it. Um, so you mentioned kind of the growth of that app. If you don't mind me asking, how many downloads are you at now?
Boy, I haven't checked recently. It's several hundred thousand,
Yeah. Is
but I
it
I can't remember. Last I don't want to I don't want to say it wrong. I don't remember. I want to guess maybe 300,000.
okay?
It's pretty good. It might be higher than that by now. I've actually not checked in quite a while.
Is it like exponentially growing,
Let's see
or
if I
is
can
it pretty steady?
It's been pretty steady. The first couple of years were exponential as word got out and people got interested, and it just started growing because people weren't aware of it. Now I think a lot of people are aware of it, but what's awesome is that we live where there's a hobby and a lifestyle that is growing in popularity, right?
Yeah.
People are becoming more interested in firearms, and new people who are coming into firearms, I think, are seeing the app, and that's where the growth is coming now. Because people who've been into guns for 20 years probably already have the app by now, but you're taking training, you're getting into it now. This is when you're learning. Hey, how do I stay legal now that I'm getting into this? Now that I'm taking the steps to carry legally in my state or in others, how do I stay within the law?
There's a good point you made there. And I'm not sure if you looked at this angle or if you've done like a poll study on your actual downloads and demographic studies, but the individuals that are purchasing or coming of age to purchase and carry firearms in states where it's not constitutionally backed, they've never lived in a time that they didn't have access to apps, right? Whereas people like myself, and I'm almost 40, and then people older than me, shit, we grew up without apps. You know what I mean? What's an app, right? Until but I'm kind of on the borderline of that. But these younger people, as they're coming up into it, right? The 20, 21 to 27, 28 year olds, they've only ever known a world full of apps, essentially. So it just makes sense for them to have it on their phone. That's the I heard it on another podcast, the Joe Rogan podcast, talking about, AI and symbiotic relationships with technology. It's like we're already there. We already are AI, right? We already have the phone. It's basically part of us, right? So having it there is really cool. Um, what I guess I would ask you this, like, what do you want to see happen with this app? Right? Where do you want to see it go?
Well, I think that's a good question. I'm pretty happy with what we've built so far. Certainly, there will always be iterations and new features, new sections as things change and as things evolve. What I'd really like to see go is this app to become useless and never used because we've passed constitutional carry federally. That's what I'd like to see happen,
That
and then I can
yes.
turn off the app and be happy.
That's the
But
answer I was
but
hoping you were going to say.
but until then, as every state has their own laws, and some of them are very very strict and very very odd, it makes sense to have an easy place to find them.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. So, as I was perusing and stuff like that, I see that you do have, recent updates, recent changes to laws for different states. Is that just you, Ryan, that's going through and like poring over different state laws and then adding them, or do you have a staff of people to kind of help support that?
Sure. Well, I update the app usually once or twice a month. I can do so more frequently. For instance, if there's a major change, then I'll make sure to grab that right away. Um, how I keep it up to date is I look out across a large number of government and other public sources and note anytime a firearms related law is passed or changed. The good news is all the state and federal legislation changes are publicly available. Everything in the app exists somewhere.
Mhm.
It's just finding it. So it's kind of a chore to keep tabs on them. Another thing is I keep a record of Indian nation laws. Those are a little harder So that's more best available basis because a lot of them aren't online. A lot of them don't have publicly accessible information when they change. So that one's I always put a caveat on that one. Check if you're crossing tribal land, check it very carefully. Um, but I'll tell you also, on occasion, if I miss something, the users of the CCW app are always encouraged to email me, let me know. So several times somebody said, "Hey, something has happened in my state. It's not a big thing, but you haven't caught it," and it gives me a heads up, and then I make sure to research and grab it after the fact.
Yeah, man. That user feedback is important, and that leads me to another question I want to ask you. Have you had have you had any testimony or anything from users of your app who have called in or messaged into your site there and said, "Hey, thank you so much. This I've actually used this to help me avoid legal problems or anything like that, or your app helped me avoid a ticket, or your app helped me do this." Have you got any kind of big wins like that?
Well, I've received a lot of positive feedback, a lot of five-star reviews, but the most interesting feedback were a couple of times from police officers who say they use my app for easy access to the transportation laws in their state as opposed to always digging through their source material. So I found that humorous, but I tell you, I always appreciate the job police officers do. Even though sometimes they enforce laws that shouldn't be there, they're always, doing a good job. And I've had interactions with police officers while I was carrying, and they've always been pleasant, always been respectful. It is a two-way street. If you're respectful to the officer, they're most likely going to be respectful to you.
Yeah, I agree. We always say one of the two worst people to get legal advice from at times are convicts and cops, right? Cops understand the law from their perspective, from understanding it enough to be able to enforce it, but it's not their job to prove guilt, right? They're like, "Yep, you broke this
Mhm.
citation, take your ass to jail," right? But it's like you wouldn't go to a divorce attorney to get your taxes done, right? You just wouldn't do it. And, cops, they have, there's not, at least, in Maryland, there is a firearms division, right? So that just goes to tell you like how many laws there are about firearms. Your average rookie cop off the street's not going to know all of the different laws surrounding Maryland firearms, especially the transport and the difference between, carrying, wearing, or transporting a firearm. And not just that, but is it different for a fire like a long gun than it is a handgun? It's a lot for them to understand. It's even more. And then the onus of responsibility is on the citizen that's exercising his right to understand that, and then to be educated enough to articulate their knowledge of the law to that officer that's choosing to detain them. Right.
No, and I'll tell you one other thing, they have to know the federal laws. For instance, I've transported through Maryland using 926A, the federal statute,
Right.
which if you follow it, supersedes Maryland law. But a police officer is not gonna necessarily know that unless they've already been in that situation.
Yeah. It's a mess. Those of you that aren't familiar with Maryland, if you want to get familiar, go download CCW 50 State Concealed Carry in the App Store, or give us a call. And if you're from Maryland, just drop down the comments, or if you want to know more, drop down the comments and let me know. But if you want to know more about Maryland law, it's pretty crazy when it comes to transporting. It's like most ridiculous stuff. Like it's legal to transport a firearm to a dog show, right? It's legal to transport your firearm, like, from one house to another, one of your residences to another residence, or from your residence to a place of business that you own, right? But you can't just take it from my house to, if I was leaving my house and I was going to like my brother's house, that's not you can't legally transport it that way unless you're using, like you said, the 926A, right? Or 916A. Which one was it?
Well,
926A.
926A is
That's
interstate.
interstate. Yeah,
There's
exactly.
other rules within the state, but for instance, when I was passing through Maryland to get to another state, I had to make sure that I was in compliance with the federal law um, in order to legally transport through that state.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so getting back to you a little bit here. I see you rocking the Beretta shirt. Is that intentional? Is that what's your
Well,
now that you're,
you know,
as a more seasoned
I have a
individual
lot
here?
of gun gear. I had to think about it, but this is probably my favorite gun is a Beretta. So I was like, I think I'll wear the Beretta shirt today. I've got other ones. I've got lots of guns that I like. So
There you go. Yeah, Beretta used to be a Maryland company. Yeah, and then they left right about the same time that they in 2013, whenever they had the big gun laws kind of pop up here in Maryland, and then they abandoned ship, right? But Now, Beretta's pretty cool. They got a long history of firearms there. What's your favorite firearm that you own?
So my favorite firearm, it depends on the situation, but if I said, hey, I'm dead broke, I can only afford one gun, I can only have one gun, it would be my carry gun, which is a Beretta PX4 Storm.
Oh, okay,
9 millimeter subcompact. It's great for carry. It's acceptable for home defense, and it's certainly if I had to pick one, that would be the one I pick. Although I'm certainly glad I don't have to pick one because I have a lot more than that.
sure. Before we go down the rabbit hole of technology or we find our way back
Yes,
into there, you can still carry, at least you self-admittedly do here on the podcast. What kind of
yes.
training are you looking for whenever you go out? Do you find yourself going out and seeking more training nowadays? Are you kind of, tell me what your training routine is like on a given year. What is it that you're going for?
Sure. Well, I think it depends year by year. The minimum is what's required by the state and or states that I have licenses in. So obviously, in like the NRA basic pistol, I got when I was in Illinois, Illinois specific course, a Utah specific course, various courses that are required to have a license. I mean, that's where you need to start with.
Mm,
Um, After that, it's it's enjoyable to do some. You can take some like defensive training, like home defense or defensive while traveling. Those are fun courses. Um, I've not gotten into like the super accuracy sports, but I mean, there's a lot of fun stuff if you want to become just a guru with a rifle. There's some fun stuff there as well. But mostly, I've taken the courses that are important for the
mhm,
license, and then just add on when I get a chance.
sure. We actually had somebody on, I believe it was from Indiana. We had on one of our original guests, Mark. Shit, I can't. The name of his company is like Marksmanship Training or something like that. He's an NRA instructor out there. I believe it's in Indiana. I don't know. No, I take that back. I think he was from Minnesota. If you had to recommend somebody's traveling or they're going through the Midwest, is there any like singular instructor in Indiana where you say you guys have got to come out and find this guy?
Well, honestly, there's so many good instructors, and it's so local to an area that I don't think I could give a singular recommendation. I mean, it depends where you are, and wherever you are, there's probably a good instructor. There's probably a couple.
Yeah, it's very political. I respect that there, Ryan. Good way to shove that question off there, man. No, I appreciate you though. Hey, all right, let's pivot back a little bit here, back to the technology. So you know, how has this app changed your life directly? I'm assuming that it's there's a revenue stream here that's allowed you to possibly pursue other things, but what's the biggest impact that this app has had on your life directly?
Well, I'll tell you, I really enjoy writing this app. I really enjoy keeping it up to date. I've always been interested in guns, always been interested in gun laws, and this gives me the excuse to really stay in looking at them all the
Mm,
time. I like writing computer programs. I like guns. It's a great marriage, and I also manage 2 companion apps. I'm not sure if you've seen them on the store. I built them also because they didn't exist and I wanted them. One is I have an app called Posted, which is a crowdsourced listing of anti-gun posted businesses, as well as their pro Second Amendment alternatives. Have tens of thousands of listings in that app. It's kept
huh.
up to date by the users. The other one is Gun Vault Tools. It's used for tracking firearms, licenses, ammo purchases, usage, as well as a variety of range tools and helpers. So, between these apps, and I have a few other apps that are not related to guns, but I also other areas of interest. So between these apps, it's just a fun thing to do, and I really enjoy kind of keeping up to date with them.
Okay. You were talking about, I've got two more big questions I really want to get to. The first one is this: you're talking about maintaining all of your different permits and stuff like that. Have you made an effort to come out and get the Maryland permit yet? And if not, we'd be happy to have you come out and get you through that program.
Well, I have a question. I'm curious, and I was thinking this earlier. How have your students done in the May issue state? I know Maryland makes it hard. It's not follow these rules and you will get a permit. It's follow these rules and we might give you one. So I'm curious if your students have had a lot of success in being able to procure a permit.
So Maryland is, as you mentioned, it is a May issue state. And for those of you guys just tuning in from probably abroad, you head over to our YouTube channel. We have a lot of stuff there where we actually break down the laws and the SOP, if you will, for who Maryland will and will not issue a permit to. But, you know, there's two that are basically gimmies right off the top. One of them is the business owner category, which, you know, essentially you have to do some. So yourself, if you're a business owner, if you wanted to apply in Maryland, you could, and you would likely qualify as long as a portion of your business is done in Maryland. And you could easily articulate that based on the fact that you have an app that's offered in Maryland, you have X amount of dollars in sales in Maryland, right? And then as long as you have like some reason to be here, maybe you come here for conferences, stuff like that. You don't really have to put that on paper, right? But they may ask you whenever they give you a call. So for business owners, you know, we have damn near 95, 99% success rate. It really depends on if those people lie to us or lie on their applications, right? Because the truth will set you free, you know, most of the time, right? And the Maryland State Police are going to give you enough rope to hang yourself with, right? So if you keep it simple, you answer the questions yes or no, you give them what they want, you give them what they need, not what they want. We see a pretty high success rate. Second category that's really, I guess, what you would call successful here in Maryland, because we are so close to the nation's capital and there are so many different military bases here, are permits issued to individuals with a top secret security clearance. That's obviously a lot more common than you think. So that's kind of the second category. And then you've got the security guard category, assumed risk. So for, you know, anybody who's kind of in the public eye, we like to use a lot of people, the way it's kind of put on there is, you know, assumed risk would be anybody that's elected, if you will, any attorney, somebody who's very visibly in the public, like law enforcement, although they kind of have their own category. But one that's not necessarily spoken about on the application itself is individuals who work with like the Child Protective Services, right? Who are finding themselves going in people's homes and extracting their children. You know, what would you do, Ryan, if I went in your house one day and I took your kid and then you saw me in Applebee's next week, right? You'd probably, there is an assumed risk based on that. You know what I mean? So there's that. And then there's, you know, sometimes paramedics, sometimes EMS, different stuff like that. So if you don't, they are picky, you know, it is a may issue state, but what Ryan and I have excelled at is helping people find those things that they're already doing that help them qualify under certain categories, of which there are 6, right? There's the business owner or business employee. So if I worked for you, Ryan, if I worked for Ryan Workman in Maryland and my only job for you was to go out and be the face of your app or your holdings group here in Maryland, you could request on my behalf that I carry while performing official duties, right? And then you could write good and substantial reason to substantiate that. So there is the business owner and then business employee category. Then there is the security clearance. So government employee or contractor that maintains a TS or higher clearance. Then there's active or former law enforcement, assumed risk. And then there's like the special police officer categories, like private investigators, correctional officers, railroad police, different stuff like that. People who have a need to carry as part of their industry. And then the last one is people who have for personal protection, which you would think is everybody, but really it's those people who have a restraining order out against somebody who can demonstrate they have threats against their life. And those threats have to be documented with either a police report or 3 notarized statements from witnesses. So based on those categories, if people are honest with us whenever they apply or they even call in, they're interested in taking a class, you know, generally we could rule out like you're either going to qualify or you're not going to qualify. We could rule that out pretty quickly. But for your case, being a business owner, right, you would have to provide 2 sources of documents, right? The first would be proof of existence. That'd be like your articles of incorporation, LLC paperwork, anything like that, existence. And then you need activity. So that would be 3 months of bank statements or a combination of 10 receipts for purchases made and 6 deposit slips. So it's actually pretty easy to get. And a lot of these people, a lot of residents in Maryland are already business owners. They just don't know it. They have a hobby it's a side hustle, right? That they're bringing money in on. They're just they haven't taken that next step yet to either set up a sole proprietorship or formalize it with an LLC. So sometimes it's as much as, hey, go down and start a bank account or file for your LLC, get an EIN or something like that. They already have everything. They just don't know it. And it's the rumor mill in Maryland that takes you so far. And I'm sure you've got some similar stories, but it's like the game telephone when you were a kid, right? You would say something to one person, and by the time it made it to 20 different people, it was mega exaggerated. I'm sure you've probably heard the saying, like, you can't get a permit in Maryland unless you carry tens of thousands of dollars of cash on you. Well, that's simply not true. It's just not true. So if you're interested, like I said, if Ryan Workman here is interested in coming out to Maryland, we'd be glad to have you. And we get you through some training on us, not a problem.
Well, that's exceptional. I'm also curious. You guys do the DC classes?
Yes, we do. Do you need
Uh,
DC as well? Come on
I
out.
think DC be interesting. I was shocked when they actually were forced to go to shall issue. That was they were the 51st, right? They're the only ones behind Illinois.
Yeah, it's crazy. And a lot of that's again, it's the rumor mill. People people call us and they're like, "Hey, we're interested in getting to Maryland wearing carry permit." And so we're like, "All right, yeah, we have a class coming up on this date. Are you interested in getting DC2?" And they're like, "What? You can't even own a gun in DC or a handgun in DC." I'm like, "Actually, you can, and we could help you go ahead and work through that process to get your permit." We do it all for it, a little bit about us is I know the show's about you, but we take it cradle to grave. We take people through their training and then basically hold their hand all the way through the application process as well. So, we have between the staff here at PTP, we've probably looked at and have assisted more applications for carry permits for DC, Virginia, and Maryland than probably anybody else or any 10, 15 instructors combined. So we have a unique, I guess, product, if you will, when it comes to that. So we'd be honored, Ryan, to have you come out and get you that training.
I will probably take you up on that. That sounds fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, do you like the beach?
I like the beach. Yes.
Well, if you're not doing anything, come out to the Eastern Shore in Ocean City. It's like one of the top 5 resort cities in the nation. April 22nd, April 23rd, if that's what you're interested in. Give me a call offline. We'll hammer that out. All right, we'll
Awesome.
get you out
That's
there on the
fantastic.
beach. So the next thing, I guess this is kind of the coup de grace, the question that I really wanted to drive home with you, because you seem to have a unique connection to technology that not a lot of other people in the firearms industry have. And that is, what do you see as the future, I guess, of technology and that marriage between tech and firearms?
Yep. So I'll have to preface this with a bit stuff. As everyone continues to use apps and online sources for more and more of their everyday lives, first of all, it's crucial to adjust to this trend for any business or any group that's offering services or offering products. So obviously you have, right? You've seen that trend and you're jumping on that trend and doing well. Um, other groups, there's some smaller gun groups that haven't done so and they're getting left behind a little bit. Online forums, like online gun forums. I'm a member of probably a couple dozen, and I'm extremely active in two. It's just a way to get into other people who are into the sport or into this area and learn as well as have fun. I mean, it's both about learning things that you don't know and also enjoying yourself. Um, I've been involved in the internet even as a teenager in the 1990s, and the pace of change just continues to accelerate, right? 20 years ago, I would have never imagined how much of what we do online would be commonplace, would be standard. Even 10 years ago, I wouldn't have imagined how quickly and how fast smartphones have grown, how they are ubiquitous now, and they do everything. I mean, you have a full computer in your pocket, and it can do pretty much anything. Um,
Yeah.
I'm excited about that, right? I don't know there'll be a huge dramatic shift with firearms, but there will continue to be improvements. There will continue to be ways of communicating and connecting with others, um, and ways to improve and simplify the process versus the old paper process, what things used to be, right? For instance, the e-forms that the ATF came out with not all that long ago. They've shortened the time frame for acquiring an NFA item. There will continue to be things going online, government interactions going online, which will make them a little less painful. They're still painful, but not quite as bad. As well as just private transactions going online and the ability to communicate with a wider audience. That's what excites me is the ability to really connect with people who you would never meet in 20 years ago. You could have never met them because they don't live, a few miles away. They live 500 miles away.
Absolutely. Look at us, right? Who would have thought
Absolutely.
this was possible? Um, we're so I used to talk to a lot more people in academia, and I spoke with this woman kind of at the beginning of kind of the COVID crisis that came across America, and she was a worldwide tutor. She's traveled all across the planet, and I spoke with her with how she envisioned the future of academics with a distributed learning network, right?
Mhm.
And what we had talked about, and now what Ryan and I talk about quite often, is how the marriage of kind of AI and remote learning could play a role in the firearms industry, right? And at whenever I was talking to her, her name's Lindsay Wander. Um, she was saying, instead of having classrooms, why don't you have network rooms or breakout sessions where you have a prolific instructor who's like the subject matter expert in the field be able to teach 1,000 students. It doesn't matter where they're at. They log in with their headset and or if even in a lab environment using the Oculus platform or something like that, where you could actually be hands on. You could reach so many more people. And what I haven't necessarily seen yet, aside from the TI system, you may or may not be familiar with it. It's kind of like a threat, act react type demonstration tool with like a cert gun similar.
Mhm.
But there,
Yes, seen that.
that exists. But what I haven't seen yet is the fully augmented reality or virtual reality kind of symbiosis between, firearms training, where you actually no shit have, fired, non-fired drills, right? Inside the
Mhm.
app where you have a response and you live in that environment. Have you heard anything in your, living in the tech world that you live in? Have you heard any trends like that? Or is that as an app developer, is that something that you have considered working with Meta and trying to get on the Oculus platform?
Yeah, I've thought about it a little bit. One downside is Meta is not exactly a friend of gun owners.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
sure
you're
you're
damn
quite
right.
aware.
So
Um,
for those of you that don't know, that's Facebook, right? And I know I got a lot of firearms instructors out there who have left, completely abandoned the Facebook platform. But anyhow, please continue. Didn't mean to step on you
no,
there.
no, no. I think there will be opportunities. What's interesting is to see how much is allowed to grow. I think if allowed, there's a lot more that can happen. Um, but a lot of the large technology firms are notoriously anti-Second Amendment, and so I'm hopeful they won't step on things too hard. Um, they've not shut things down yet, and I hope that won't happen. But certainly, with a lot of the large platforms, they do put a lot of restrictions, which may make it more challenging for some firearm related content.
Sure. Yeah, that is a very good perspective.
Yeah.
Um,
And to give one more, I had to fight quite a bit with Apple to get they took my app off one time saying no, it's requires like mature audience. They're putting things on it that I thought were not correct. I was actually able to have a conversation and get that lifted, but there is a real kind of anti-gun culture in a lot of technology firms, and so that'll be, I think, one challenge to overcome.
yeah, it's crazy how they're anti 2A in the real world, but they'll put out these games like Call of Duty and Fortnite that are racking billions of dollars of revenue, right? It's ridiculous, man. Um, Ryan, I know that you're a busy man. You got a busy life out there. Last thing before we kind of wrap it up here, where can people find out more about you? You have any social media handles or anything, or if you want to push the platform, push your app a little bit, where can people find the
Sure.
app and where can people find more about you?
Sure. So, I mean, our website is writeapp.net. All of our information is on our site, but really, mostly what we're here for is our apps. So, Apple App Store, Google Play, even on Amazon, you can download our apps, and kind of get what's available.
Absolutely. And for those of you guys who are listening, make sure you drop down the comments, drop down in the description as well. We're going to have all the links to every product that Ryan has put together that helps better serve us in the Second Amendment community. If you like what we're doing here, guys, make sure you throw us a subscribe button. Make sure you help out Ryan and help build this community that he's attempting to maintain, guys, by speaking with your pocketbook, putting out, it's only $2 for the app, guys. Make it happen. All right. Ryan, with that, it's been an honor having you come on the show, and I look forward to doing this again. And I look forward to having you come out here very shortly to get your training from Maryland and DC.
I appreciate it. I appreciate the chance to talk to you, and I'm very interested in the training that you guys offer.
All right, man. With that, guys, as always, learn, defend, prevail. We're out.